So yeah, thank you for joining us. So we've been talking a lot about music creation, a lot about technology, and you certainly have a tremendous amount of perspective on both sides. But on the music creation side, can you talk about the transition from a world dominated by physical product to a world, more sort of digital?
More digital, yeah. Well, I'm one of those odd artists that, got started by reading this magazine called Sonic Option Network. Anybody remember that? You remember that, right? When I found that magazine, I couldn't believe it. It was like, a ray of light from heaven. People making their own records, pressing them themselves and distributing them and talking about them. And most of it was just as awful as my first record. But it was an important step to be able to have your own identity with your product. And back then it was still vinyl pretty much, and if you wanted to do cassette like that. But there was so many problems with that, and I saw that the first time. I had my own record company. I was the artist and the president, of course, and the only employee, and I took care of everything. And but even when I was, the artist in control with everything, there was all the stuff I was not in control of. The quality of the product, everything went wrong in every aspect of it. And then just getting the record to people in Germany, it wouldn't arrive right and everything. And I think about what we do today, and it's so much better because my musical vision actually goes anywhere in the world, and it doesn't get corrupted. It might be a little squish compared to what would come off a really nice piece of vinyl, many years ago. But when you compare with all the things that went wrong with the delivery of that physical package to today's so much better.
Has it changed the way that you think about the creative process? For instance, vinyl, you have a set amount of minutes, and you've got two sides, and a CD also a set number of minutes, and the album format. But now with digital, you can release a song at a time, or you can try to have a conceptual whole as an album. Does it affect the way that you work creatively?
I still don't like song at a time, but that's because I'm old, I think, and so I grew up listening to pieces of work from artists that would arrive after many, many months or years. That was my time of learning about music. So the album format I was attracted to it. And that's how I got turned on to jazz and classical music and just about every form of music. It was with a compilation or an album. And when I studied music, and I studied sonata allegro form and other forms of writing classical music, it was a form. So when you get a record and it's the best of the Baroque hits, or something like that, it's weak. You know what I mean? And so when I hear about artists releasing just one track here, one track there, and I'm asked to do that all the time, it kind of hurts a little bit because it doesn't fit with my day-to-day emotional, artistic way of living,
So do you really think that it's sort of an irreversible course towards single tracks, or do you think there will be an album renaissance that happens after we just...
I don't believe in a return to anything. I think that music business has been in a constant state of chaos ever since, and there's always a group that's dispossessed and then a new group that enjoys the new franchise, and it just keeps going. I don't know if you can say it's every 5 years, every 7 years, every 10 years, but every little model that the music industry is, if you go back 120 years or something like that, live performance, and there's publishing, and people can play music at home.
Right.
And so all these people go out of work because people are staying home. They're not going to see music.
Right.
They're staying
Everything
home.
is disruptive to what came before.
And then there's recorded music, and then, every time there's a new format, a bunch of people go out of business. And so I don't see it as any different than today, other than it's just the forms are just getting more unimaginable. They're getting less attached to, let's say, a piano player roll or a piece of vinyl or something like that. But equally weird, I guess. But they're just happening faster. So
with the combination of music and technology, lots of jobs have been created trying to find technology solutions and social networking solutions for artists. Is there something antithetical to the creative process to constantly be out there?
For me, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Having to talk like this in front of a bunch of people with cameras going. John Luini over there from Chime Interactive, he knows. He's always twisting my arm to, look into the camera and say something, and I'm like, go away, It's horrible, to tell you the truth. And I've driven, I thought I should just draw the line at composing, and because every other part of the professional musician's life has to be recorded now, and the machine needs to be fed, and it just so happens they need images and sound, and they need to know what car did you drive to the studio, how do you walk into the studio, let's do that again, and what case do you open first, and who do you talk to, what do you talk about, what are you going to eat for lunch, when are you going to record the song, and all that stuff has got nothing to do with the way I think about music, why I want to play music, and I certainly don't want anybody watching me while I'm doing it. But I do know that being an artist is weird, because we often say, go away, go away, go away. Okay, now, please pay attention.
Right.
And, when people don't pay attention, we get really upset. So I know we're quirky that way, so I just figure we get what we ask for,
We're just a moody bunch, but it's,
we are,
it happens. No, but I think that if I get what you're saying, people would much rather have you go into your cave, be creative, and then produce something great and share it with them, rather than constantly being in contact with mediocre work.
Yes, yeah. Well, I think that some days, I'm not going to say that this is the way I really feel about it, but I'm going to say some days, when I'm just sort of being reactionary about it, if I'm watching TV and I'm watching a number of the programs that feed off of this sort of every little detail thing, I'm realizing that the people that I'm seeing over and over and over again are the mediocre people, the people who need to be in front of the camera all the time, getting out of their car, going into the studio, all this stuff, because they've got nothing else
That's a fair point.
But they may be very good at showing up in the right car, and they're good at walking into the studio. And there are thousands of things that make up being an entertainer, and everybody kind of shines in one aspect of it. So it is important to know what you're good at and not show everybody what you're not good at. I mean, that's obvious. But what I'm seeing is a lot of this intensity about media very often just focuses on a lot of the stuff that really in the long run doesn't matter.
I would guess that in your case in particular, you have a lot of really diehard fans who are guitar enthusiasts who are just really plugged into that world. And so in that sense, there's not such a need to go out and reconvince them that your new album is going to be, as awesome. But
I wish I could feel that way. But
as you rebranded as Chickenfoot, did you find a need to have to now I'm not Joe Satriani, I'm Chickenfoot, and I need to remind people, I need to put myself in front of them more? Or did people follow just in a natural kind of...
Well, with Chickenfoot it's very different because it's four people, extremely different people, and we knew that it was a long shot. This is an old bunch of guys, right, get together, and although we come from other bands that are successful, we do other things that are successful, still that doesn't earn you a seat, in the top 10. Just like that. You still have to prove yourself to your audience. So we have to convince people who we are. And in the old days, maybe we would simply just get in the truck and go, and we would play forever until people got used to us and got into our sound. But we have the benefit now of all this media, and we can make films, and we can show people what we're really like. We can show them what we take seriously, what we don't take seriously, so we can sort of cut through all the crap, and so they get to know us as soon as possible. This has been extremely important for Chickenfoot because we're a band of guys that probably can't stay together very long because we're in other bands and we have other requirements that we've got to do. So being able to have 5 days in the studio, record most of an album, have John come and film us, and from there create a podcast for 10 songs, a movie to go with the special DVD package, and all sorts of stuff like that is very important to us. So that's great. I wish we had even more technology to help us with that, because I can feel our limited span only because of the other things we do.
Do you enjoy working in other media other than just pure music, video, and I mean, is it a creative outlet of a different kind? Or
Yes,
is
yeah.
It, okay.
When there's time for it, and I feel like I can do what I want, I get into it. But I mean, I did that for 2 tours. We started doing a podcast every week, I guess it was, about 10 minutes. And John started off saying, do one, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, but I would just really get into it after a while. And they were pretty crazy looking and psychedelic, but they started to get to be 8, 9, 10, 12 minutes long. And then after a while I realized I was spending about 5 hours a day in the hotel room doing nothing but editing, because I was slow, basically, at it. But I think after 2 tours I finally burnt out on the whole thing, and I said I've just got to go back to being the guitar player who lays around and dreams about new guitar riffs, and
I want to make sure that we have time to open it up to any questions that people might have in the audience. This is a real opportunity to ask a legend a question, so please jump in.
Sure. Yeah.
We're gonna. Well, I
Who's
think
pick- oh,
we got
this is-
vetoed over there.
Oh,
with
is
the
that the-
microphone,
I have
but
the
you'll be next
conch.
then.
Yes.
I have the conch. Hi. Hey, just curious what you might, as from an artist, envision. We talked about we got vinyl, we got the piano roll. So, what's going to be the delivery, either format or mechanism or whatever, for how we have music now and in the future? Do you have any? It is a vision. Doesn't have to be a prediction, but just maybe if you could fantasize a little
Crystal
bit.
ball here.
Yeah, I'm not too worried about the technicality of it.
No, not technical.
Yeah.
Experience.
Yeah, because one of the things I realize is that the technicality of it really, even though it's gone through these enormous changes, it hasn't changed what I'm asked to do, which is to play my guitar. The weird thing is how do I get compensated for it? So I can't do it for free. So I don't know how that's, once I throw that into the mix, I realize, well, how am I going to say I can't go on tour and play concerts around the world because I've got this thing to do, this new technology thing to do, And somehow it's got to figure into bringing in money. Otherwise, nobody gets paid for anything and everybody stays home. So that always stops me in my tracks, like the idea, like in the future, all concerts will be holographic. And you'll step into your pod and you'll in a virtual world with your other players in Seattle and LA and your world audience. But still, I'd be asking the same question. I'm not getting in the pod unless I get, blah, 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 That's what every musician's going to want to know, because they still have to buy strings and store their gear and get it shipped over here and there. They have to pay rent and everything else, so.
I think the front row had his.
So
Okay.
I have a few things.
We got a microphone here for you.
Okay. So couple compliments. Saturator, Ice Line, great pedals.
Thank you.
So love it. You also did some game music, I think, for NASCAR or.
Yeah, I'll never
so-
do that again.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, what was that like? And the other thing is, how's the new Marshall thing going? And when is it going to be ready? Do you have any ideas?
The new Marshall amp will be ready for the January NAMM show. So yeah, and we'll call it just a Joe Satriani signature JVM. I'm having so much fun with that amp. I've done 2 tours, a live video, and then did the Chickenfoot record with it, and it is really great. The video game music, I got to say, it was exciting at first, only because I was attracted, because it was new and shiny, Sort of like what you're saying, about some new medium that comes along. And I'm thinking, well, okay, that might be fun. And then I realized after a while that I'm in my studio and I'm recording most of this at home, and I'm writing all these riffs, and I realized, well, I don't want to give that one to some NASCAR video game. I'll put that one over here. I write a couple of more. It's like, oh, I love that one. Okay, I'll put that one over there. But eventually, I had to write these 50 cues, and I regretted letting those things be put onto a video game. And it got worse, because we go in and we record it, and we had this call from the music director saying, now, when you guys mix this thing, 3 dB, that's the dynamic range. That hurts right away. You think, okay, everything is going to be squished down. And then we get another call, well, it's 2 dB. It's 2 dB. And we're doing this in 3 days. We're doing all the drums in 3 days, because all the other stuff I did at home. Anyway, long story short, 0 dB right? One level. I never heard of such a thing. And we're sitting there mixing, like, why are we mixing? Like, this is ridiculous. And I'm hearing these things that I played. Now, admittedly, maybe I'm the only fan of these things, but they came from in here, and I just didn't want to let them go. And no matter how much they paid me, I thought, it's not enough. That's 50 pieces of music. Even though they're short, I could have turned them into symphonies, you know? And that's when I realized that's why I do it. And the other stuff, the commerce part, is a pain in the ass, you know? Especially when it's something as weird as squishing it down to 0 dB, and then they add car noises and people screaming. I mean, I thought I was doing it because no one was getting their heads chopped off and eaten or something. I thought, okay, it can't be that bad, you know? At least it's just cars, you know? But then it got so reduced. But, you know, I suppose people that wouldn't normally listen to my music, they got introduced to my music by this video game, because there's millions of people who play it. So, you know, people around me say it was a good thing you did that, it did this, it did that, but it still hurts.
It's definitely a painful creative trade-off.
Yes, yeah.
I think Dave Dieter has
It's not working.
That's on now.
There you go.
I'm pretty sure. You talk into this end, right?
Yes.
So I'm kind of curious to hear you talk about using technology as an artistic tool directly, you know, when you're making music with your instrument and your signal chain. As you know, guitarists in particular are very sort of nostalgia-driven. There are only 2 or 3 guitar models that are sort of seen as acceptable by a lot of guitar aficionados, and certain old vintage amplifiers and analog pedals. And you've been much more progressive. You have your own guitar model from Ibanez that's kind of futuristic looking. You still use a valve amplifier, but
Yeah.
I want to know, the older I get, the more I play, the more I just want to kind of have a guitar and a curly cable into an amplifier. And you definitely have embraced technology of all kinds in how you produce your music. I want to know what your decision, you know, do you constantly check out new technology, and how do you decide when it's helping you express yourself, and how do you decide when it's an impediment or a block? How do you approach that?
I think it's a gut feeling. I mean, a lot of the stuff I do is driven by a composition that I'm writing. I remember a few records ago, well, actually quite a few, there was a song I did where I had been jamming along to a Chemical Brothers track, and I got this idea to write a song that had a limited amount of chord changes over it for a very long extended period of time, and to change the emphasis on melody so much and put more improvisation into it. And that was just the experience of playing in a Zoom, a little Zoom box. Very few people maybe know what that is. That's like a little headphone amp, a little digital headphone amp. And that whole experience just was inspiring. So then I thought, well, how would I put this on a record? And I realized that I had to take that experience and just simply bring it into the studio. And it was pretty funny. And it wasn't the first time I'd taken a Zoom, you know, something that cost less than $100, into a, you know, multi-million-dollar studio and say, this is it. Here's a little mini plug. That's going to be my big guitar sound. But sometimes technology surprises you in that there's no correlation with what you want to play and where that thing came from. I mean, is it a plant or is it a little digital chip? You know, is it a valve or is it just a transistor? I don't really care. What I care about is what did I experience when I came up with that idea, and what was the tool, or what were the tools I was using at the time. Then suddenly it's legitimate. So in my mind, it's all legitimate. It really depends on what you do with it. And the perfect litmus test would be that there's more people playing with the perfect guitar and the perfect amp out there that really suck. That's true. You know? And so that should be your indication that it really doesn't matter. But if it matters to you, then it matters to you. That's what matters.
There's only ever been one Marvin Gaye, that's what I always see. Anybody can make a record now, but not everybody can make a good record.
Well, I think that the other thing about that, about technology, is when it comes by, and I think music is the same way. You know, today things that are said here on this panel are taken by the audience in a relative way. You spoke before me, so the things that we say are kind of taken in together, and he said this and he said that, so I'm going to make a decision on what I heard today. But if it was a different speaker, you know, if he was speaking beforehand, the relative position of our ideas may change what people take out of the room. So music is the same way. You put out a record that is, I play every melody with my teeth, let's say. And if it had been put out in 1959, it would have been, wow, it's rock and roll. It's, just like all the other rock and rollers. They're doing silly things with their guitar. If I did it today, people would be like, what an idiot, Like, who cares, So the relative nature of the technology is also very important. And as you said about Marvin Gaye, and the artistry is the same way. I think that's what's not fair about life, is that sometimes something really beautiful and artistic will, in fact, go unnoticed. And there's no reason why it should. Art always rise to the top. I don't think so. I think that's a sad reality of life, is that sometimes the cool stuff does go unnoticed.
We'll do one quick one. I think the happy hour.
Oh, that's right. I was going to keep my answer short. Sorry about that.
That kind of tied into what I was going to ask. Do you think that music education plays a role at all? Do you think that music education plays a role at all in dictating like what's popular in mainstream music and like what art gets noticed and what doesn't?
No, I have not figured out what makes things popular. I can't even begin to think. I think it's sort of dangerous to even think that you could,
Have you been surprised that you work on something that you think is really great and it doesn't get the traction you're expecting, or something does get traction?
All the time. But I got to tell you, do you know how crazy I am? I've written stuff where I was certain that everyone would stop me on the street and say, "Oh my God, 2 whole tone scales." Modulating to a minor key. I can't believe what you did on that song. But, those are the things that, make me excited. My heart beats like rapidly for weeks as I'm working on a song, and then nobody ever asked me about it. I once sequenced a record where every song started in an ascending key, moved up and up and up. Not one person, even the musos in the music magazines from all over the world, nobody noticed it. So I've learned to enjoy those things myself and not worry about, not take it out on anybody, But the thing about music education is that if you feel like you need it, that means you need it. When I was young, I felt like I really needed it. Like I had a hunger for the secret of music, so I sought out people who could teach me, and that helped me get from one spot to the next. It helped me to become a composer, a writer, and feel like I was in the right space. But I've known plenty of people and been on tour with them who operate on a completely different level. They've had 0 education, and still they find that path to inspiration and creativity, and it's remarkable. But I don't know if it affects what people listen to. I actually, like I said before, I claim no, insight into reality in general.
But now if you happen to bump into Joe Satriani on the street, you know how to compliment him and really make his day. I would like to thank all of the guests, Neil Ketkar from Rovi, Dave Dederer from the Presidency of the United States of America, and Mr. Joe Satriani. Yeah. Let's give them all a big
thank you. Thanks. And you.
Hello, Chicago. Hello, Nashville.
Hello, Montreal.
I doubt if there's anyone watching in any of those cities, though.
Nope. Well,
definitely not Chicago. We've never been there before. Maybe in Montreal. Your girlfriend?
Yeah, I hope she is.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hi. And
Tour's going great. We're in space.